I think I didn't do anything wrong, just had a little too much to drink and crashed at my ex's place. Nothing happened, honestly. But now I'm holding divorce papers, and everyone's acting like I'm some kind of monster. I can't believe my own husband would take things this far, just because of one harmless mistake. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The fluorescent lights of my office cubicle had been giving me a headache all week. As an admin at Henderson & Associates, I spent my days shuffling paperwork and fielding calls from demanding clients. By Friday evening, I was ready to blow off some steam. "Eva, you coming to Murphy's with us?" asked Jessica from accounting, gathering her purse. I glanced at my phone. Tom had texted an hour ago. "Pick up milk on your way home. Molly wants pancakes tomorrow." "Actually," I said, sliding my phone into my bag, "I think I'll pass on Murphy's. I'm meeting some old friends at the Monarch instead." The Monarch Bar sat in the trendy part of downtown, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs. It was the kind of place that attracted young professionals and had craft cocktails with names like Midnight in Paris. More importantly, it was where Owen Reed worked. Owen and I had dated briefly 3 years ago, before Tom and I got serious. He was everything Tom wasn't: spontaneous, charming, the kind of guy who could make you laugh until your sides hurt. When I walked into the Monarch that night, he flashed that same crooked smile that had caught my attention all those years ago. "Eva Larkspur," he said, polishing a glass behind the bar. "Look what the cat dragged in." "It's Eva Larkspur now, actually," I corrected, though I found myself smiling back. Right. The husband. How's married life treating you?" I slumped onto a bar stool. "Oh, same old routine. Work, home, dinner, bedtime stories, repeat." Owen poured me a generous glass of wine without being asked. "Sounds thrilling." My phone buzzed. Tom again. "Running late? Molly's asking when you'll be home." I turned the phone face down. "Just one drink," I told Owen. "I need to decompress." One drink became 2, then 3. Owen's shift ended at 11, and somehow I found myself following him back to his apartment above the vintage record store on 5th Street. We talked about old times, about dreams we'd had, about how different our lives might have been. "You always were too good for the suburban housewife thing," Owen said, refilling my wine glass on his couch. My phone had been buzzing intermittently all evening. I'd ignored it, telling myself Tom was being controlling. Couldn't I have one night to myself? Didn't I deserve to feel young and interesting again? I woke up on Owen's couch at 6:47 a.m., my neck stiff and my mouth dry. Panic shot through me as I grabbed my phone. 15 missed calls from Tom, 7 from his mother, Patricia, a string of increasingly worried text messages. "Eva, where are you? Please call me back. I'm getting worried. Molly keeps asking where Mommy is. If you don't answer by midnight, I'm calling the police." The last message, sent at 2:33 a.m., was just, "I know you're okay. We'll talk when you get home." I called an Uber, my hands shaking as I tried to think of what to say. Owen was still asleep, and I slipped out without waking him. Nothing had happened. We'd just talked, and I'd fallen asleep on his couch. Tom would understand. He had to. But when I walked into our apartment, Tom was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, still wearing yesterday's clothes. He looked like he hadn't slept. His dark eyes, usually so warm, were cold and distant. "Daddy!" Molly ran to me in her pajamas. "Where were you? Daddy said you were at a work thing, but it was really long." I hugged her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Mommy just had a late night with friends, sweetheart. I'm sorry I worried you." Tom stood up slowly. "Molly, go get dressed. Grandma Patricia is taking you to the park this morning." "But I want to stay with Mommy." "Go get dressed," Tom repeated, his voice firm but gentle. After Molly reluctantly trudged to her room, Tom turned to me. So, a work thing? I went out with some friends after work. I had too much to drink and crashed on someone's couch. I didn't want to drive home. Whose couch? The question hung in the air like a blade. I could lie, make up some story about Jessica or another coworker. But Tom's expression told me he already suspected the truth. Owen's, I said quietly. But nothing happened, Tom. I swear to you, nothing happened. Tom's jaw tightened. He nodded once, picked up his coffee mug and walked to the sink. Your husband was here all night, worried sick, while you were sleeping on your ex-boyfriend's couch. Our daughter cried herself to sleep because she thought something had happened to you. You're being dramatic. Am I? He turned to face me, and I was startled by the pain in his eyes. You ignored my calls all night. You lied to our daughter. You spent the night at another man's house, and you think I'm being dramatic. I felt cornered, defensive. You're acting like I had an affair. I fell asleep on a couch, Tom. That's it. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. Get some rest, Eva. We'll talk about this later. But as he walked past me toward Molly's room, I caught the look on his face. It wasn't anger. It was something much worse. It was disappointment. By Monday morning, I'd convinced myself that Tom was overreacting. I'd made a mistake, sure, but it wasn't the end of the world. Marriages survived worse things than a night of poor judgment. At work, I found myself telling a different version of events to my coworkers. My husband is being such a drama queen, I complained to Carla Mendez, my best friend from college who worked in HR. I stayed out a little late Friday night, and now he's acting like I committed some cardinal sin. Carla raised an eyebrow. How late is a little late? I crashed at a friend's place instead of driving home drunk. I thought he'd be proud of me for being responsible. Well, when you put it that way... Carla shook her head. Men can be so possessive. You're allowed to have a social life. Her validation felt good, even though I'd left out several key details, like the fact that the friend was my ex-boyfriend, or that I'd ignored Tom's increasingly frantic calls all night. That evening, Tom tried again to have a conversation. Molly was in bed, and he'd made chamomile tea. A peace offering, I thought. I've been thinking about Friday night, he said, settling beside me on the couch. Tom, I already explained... Just let me finish. His voice was calm, but I could see tension in his shoulders. I need to understand what happened. You left work around 5. You texted me at 6 saying you were having dinner with coworkers. Then nothing until I found you coming home Saturday morning. I felt my defenses rising. I told you I went out with friends. I lost track of time. For 12 hours. I fell asleep. At Owen Reed's apartment. The way he said Owen's full name made my stomach clench. How do you... I called Jessica Sunday morning. She said you didn't go to Murphy's with them. Tom's eyes never left my face. So I'm asking you again. What happened Friday night? I felt trapped, angry that he'd gone behind my back to check my story. Fine. I went to the Monarch. Owen works there. We caught up. I had too much to drink and I fell asleep on his couch. End of story. You spent the night at your ex-boyfriend's apartment and didn't think to call me. I was drunk, Tom. I wasn't thinking clearly. And you're saying, spent the night like we were having some torrid affair. I passed out on his couch, fully clothed. Tom was quiet for a long moment. Show me your phone. Excuse me? Your phone. Show me the Uber receipts from that night. My heart started racing. I'm not showing you my phone. I'm not a child and you're not my father. Eva, I'm trying to trust you here, but nothing. I stood up, pacing to the window. This is exactly the problem, Tom. You're so insecure, so controlling. I can't have friends. I can't go out. I can't breathe without you questioning every move I make. That's not. It is. You've always been jealous of Owen. Even when we were dating, you couldn't stand that I had a past before you. Tom's face went very still. This isn't about jealousy, Eva. This is about honesty, about respect. Respect? I laughed bitterly. You want to talk about respect? How about respecting my privacy? How about trusting your wife instead of calling my co-workers to fact-check my stories? I wouldn't have to fact-check if your stories made sense. That stung because it was true, but I pushed forward anyway. I'm done with this conversation. I made a mistake. I should have called. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to let you make me feel like a criminal for having a social life. I stormed off to our bedroom, slamming the door behind me. Through the thin walls, I could hear Tom cleaning up the untouched teacups, his movements careful and quiet so as not to wake Molly. The next morning, I decided to take control of the narrative. I posted a photo on Instagram from Friday night, me and Owen, and a few other people at the Monarch, all of us laughing at something off camera. The caption read, "Sometimes you need a night out with old friends to remember who you are." In authenticity, Zhao friendship, Zhao's living my best life. Within an hour, the photo had dozens of likes and supportive comments from friends who didn't know the full story. You deserve to have fun. Tom is so lucky to have such a social butterfly. Girls' night is sacred. I screenshotted some of the comments and sent them to Carla with a message. See? Normal people understand that friends can be friends. But when I got home that evening, Tom was waiting with his laptop open on the kitchen table. On the screen was my Instagram post. "Girls' night," he said quietly. I felt my cheeks flush. It wasn't just me and Owen. There were other people there. Other people who aren't in the photo. They were there when I took it. "Eva." Tom's voice was tired. "Just stop, please." He closed the laptop and looked at me with such sadness that I almost broke down and told him everything. Almost admitted that yes, Owen and I had flirted. Yes, I'd felt something I hadn't felt in years. Yes, I'd chosen to ignore Tom's calls because some part of me had wanted to pretend, just for one night, that I was still the carefree girl I'd been before marriage and motherhood. Instead, I doubled down. "I don't know what you want from me, Tom. I've apologized. I've explained what happened. If that's not enough for you, then maybe the problem isn't me." Tom stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right," he said, and something in his tone made my stomach drop. "Maybe the problem isn't you." He stood up, tucked his laptop under his arm, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "To my brother's. I need some space to think." "Tom, wait." But he was already gone, leaving me alone in our kitchen with the echo of my own lies. Tom didn't come home that night, or the next. When I called, he answered politely but distantly, assuring me he'd pick up Molly from school as planned and take her for their usual Wednesday dinner. He was staying at Dennis's place, he said, just for a few days. I threw myself into damage control, calling my mother and painting myself as the victim of Tom's unreasonable jealousy. "He's being completely irrational, Mom," I said, pacing around my empty apartment. "I had one night out with friends, and now he's acting like I'm some kind of cheater." Helen Prescott had never been Tom's biggest fan. She'd always thought he was too quiet, too serious for her vivacious daughter. "Honey, I've been worried about this for years. Tom has always been so controlling. Remember how he didn't want you to go on that girls' trip to Miami?" "Exactly." I seized on this revisionist history eagerly. "He's always trying to isolate me from my friends." "You need to stand up for yourself, Eva. Don't let him guilt you into apologizing for having a social life." Armed with my mother's validation, I decided to take the offensive. I started posting more frequently on social media. Photos of myself, looking confident and happy. Quotes about toxic relationships and knowing your worth. I shared articles about emotional abuse and controlling partners. The response was immediate and gratifying. Friends rallied around me, offering support and sharing their own stories of crazy jealous boyfriends and husbands. Carla was my biggest champion, reposting my content with comments like, "Say it louder for the people in the back," and "Eva is the strongest woman I know." But not everyone was buying my narrative. On Thursday afternoon, I was picking up Molly from school when Patricia Larkspur approached me in the parking lot. Tom's mother had always been cordial but distant with me. Today her face was granite. "Eva," she said, her voice clipped, "we need to talk." "Hi, Patricia. If you're here about Tom, I think he's being—" "I know exactly what my son is being," she interrupted. "He's being a man who trusted his wife and got betrayed for it." I felt my face flush. Around us, other parents were starting to notice the confrontation. "I don't know what Tom told you, but he told me you spent the night at another man's house. He told me you lied about it, then lied again when he caught you. He told me you're now posting on social media like he's some kind of abuser." Molly came running up then, backpack bouncing, unaware of the tension crackling between her grandmother and me. "Grandma Pat, are you taking me for ice cream?" Patricia's expression softened as she looked at her granddaughter. "Not today, sweetheart, but I'll see you this weekend, okay?" She turned back to me, her voice low and fierce. "That little girl adores you. She doesn't understand why Daddy isn't coming home. But instead of fixing your marriage, you're too busy playing the victim on Instagram. Patricia, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I understand that my son has been nothing but devoted to you for 8 years. I understand that he works 2 jobs to give you and Molly a good life, and I understand that you threw it all away for one night with your ex-boyfriend." She straightened up, her voice returning to normal volume. "Tom is staying with Dennis for now. But this can't go on forever, Eva. You need to decide what kind of person you want to be." With that, she walked away, leaving me standing in the school parking lot with Molly tugging on my hand. "Mummy, why was Grandma Pat mad?" "She wasn't mad, sweetheart," I lied, my hands shaking as I buckled her into her car seat. "She's just worried about Daddy." That evening, I called Carla in tears. "Tom's family is turning against me. His mother basically ambushed me at Molly's school." "What did she say?" I gave Carla a heavily edited version of the confrontation, painting Patricia as cruel and unreasonable. Carla was appropriately outraged. "The audacity," she fumed. "Like Tom is some perfect saint who's never made a mistake. I'm posting about this." "Carla, maybe don't—" But she was already typing. Within minutes, she'd shared a long post about toxic in-laws and women supporting women. She didn't mention names, but anyone who knew us would understand who she was talking about. The post got dozens of supportive comments, but it also drew some pushback. A few mutual friends questioned whether there might be more to the story. One comment, from Tom's co-worker Mike, simply said, "There are always 2 sides." I screenshotted Mike's comment and sent it to Carla with a furious message. "See how they're all ganging up on me?" But privately, something Patricia had said was eating at me. Tom did work 2 jobs, his day job at the engineering firm and weekend consulting work, to afford our lifestyle. He'd never complained, never made me feel guilty for not contributing more financially. He'd encouraged me to pursue my interests, supported my decisions, been an involved and loving father to Molly. I pushed those thoughts away. I couldn't afford to feel guilty now. I was in survival mode. That weekend, I took Molly to my mother's house, where I knew I'd find a sympathetic audience. Helen Prescott lived in the same suburban house where I'd grown up, all floral wallpaper and family photos. "You look thin," she said, pulling me into a hug. "This stress isn't good for you." Over dinner, I laid out my case again, with Molly playing quietly in the next room. My mother listened, nodding and making appropriately outraged sounds. "I never trusted that quiet act of his," she said, refilling my wine glass. "Still waters run deep, and not always in a good way. Remember how he barely spoke at your wedding reception? He's just shy. Shy men can be the most controlling, honey. They bottle everything up and then explode when they don't get their way." It was a compelling narrative, and I found myself believing it more with each retelling. Tom wasn't the victim here. I was. I was a woman trying to maintain her independence in the face of an increasingly controlling husband. But when Molly asked for the third time that weekend when Daddy was coming home, I felt a crack in my carefully constructed armor. "Soon, baby," I promised, though I had no idea if it was true. On Sunday evening, as I was loading our overnight bags into the car, my phone buzzed with a text from Dennis. "Tom is moving his things out of the apartment tomorrow while you're at work. Thought you should know." My hands went numb. I stared at the message, reading it over and over. Moving his things out. Not just staying at Dennis's for a few days, actually moving out. I called Tom immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, then again. Finally, I sent a text. "We need to talk. This is getting out of hand." His response came an hour later. "I agree. My lawyer will be in touch." Lawyer. The word hit me like a physical blow. I sat in my mother's driveway, Molly already asleep in her car seat, and felt my carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. This was supposed to be Tom backing down, apologizing for overreacting, begging me to forgive his jealousy. This was not supposed to be lawyers and moving out and the very real possibility that I had pushed too far. I looked back at Molly in the rearview mirror, her face peaceful in sleep, and felt the first real stab of fear. What had I done? I barely slept Sunday night, my mind racing between panic and defiance. By Monday morning, I'd convinced myself that Tom was bluffing. The lawyer threat was just another attempt to control me, to make me grovel and apologize for something that wasn't even my fault. I went to work as usual, but I couldn't concentrate. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, expecting legal documents or divorce papers. Instead, I got supportive messages from friends who'd seen Carla's posts, offering to take me out for drinks or listen if I needed to vent. Around noon, I decided to take the offensive. I called Tom directly. "Eva," he answered on the second ring, his voice carefully neutral. "Tom, we need to talk. This lawyer thing is ridiculous." "Is it?" "Yes, we are married. We have a daughter. You can't just throw away 8 years because of one mistake." There was a long pause. "Meet me at Grind Coffee on 5th Street, 1 hour. Grind Coffee was neutral territory, not too close to either of our workplaces, not a place loaded with memories. I arrived first and chose a table in the back corner, away from the lunch crowd. Tom walked in exactly on time, looking like he hadn't slept much either. But there was something different about him, a kind of quiet resolve that made my stomach clench. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sitting across from me. "Of course. Tom, this whole thing has gotten completely out of hand. I know I made a mistake, but... Eva," his voice was gentle but firm, "I need you to listen to me. Really listen." I nodded, though every instinct was screaming at me to keep talking, keep explaining, keep controlling the narrative. I've spent the last week trying to understand what happened, not just Friday night, but everything leading up to it. The distance between us, the way you've been... different. Different how? Secretive, defensive, always on your phone, always making plans that don't include me. He leaned forward slightly. "Eva, when did you start talking to Owen again?" The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? When did you start talking to him? Before Friday night? I felt heat rising in my cheeks. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a direct question." My mind raced. How much did he know? What had he found out? We reconnected on social media a few months ago. Just casual stuff. Old friends catching up. Tom nodded slowly. "Show me." "Show you what?" "Your phone. The messages between you and Owen." "Tom, I'm not going to..." "Then I'll show you mine." He pulled out his phone and opened his photo gallery. My heart sank as I saw screenshot after screenshot. Messages between Owen and me going back 3 months. Flirty comments on social media posts. Inside jokes. Late-night conversations that had grown increasingly intimate. "Where did you get these?" "Owen's ex-girlfriend sent them to me. Apparently, she's been watching his social media since they broke up last month." Tom's voice was eerily calm. She thought I should know that my wife was sliding into her ex's DMs. I felt the walls closing in. Tom, those messages don't mean anything. Don't they? He scrolled to a particular conversation from 2 weeks before the bar incident. Read this one out loud. I stared at the screen, my own words glaring back at me. I keep thinking about what you said the other night, about how different things might have been. Sometimes I feel so trapped in this suburban housewife life. Owen's response, you don't have to be trapped. You could always come visit me at work. We could talk more about it. My response, maybe I will. Tom works late on Fridays. Ava. Tom's voice was still gentle, but there was steel underneath. You planned this, the whole thing. You didn't just randomly end up at Owen's bar that night. I opened my mouth to deny it, but what was the point? The evidence was right there, in my own words. It wasn't what you think. What do I think? You think I was having an affair. You think I was planning to leave you for him. Tom was quiet for a long moment. Were you? The question hung between us like a chasm. I could lie again, keep spinning the story, keep playing the victim. But looking at Tom's face, the pain, the exhaustion, the fading hope, I felt something crack inside me. I don't know, I whispered. Maybe. I was confused. I felt like I was disappearing, like I was just Tom's wife and Molly's mother and nothing else. Tom nodded slowly. So you decided to find yourself in another man's bed. I didn't sleep with him. Ava, stop. His voice was tired now, all the fight gone out of it. Just stop, please. We sat in silence for several minutes, the coffee shop bustling around us while our marriage crumbled between the sugar packets and napkin dispensers. What happens now? I finally asked. Tom reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. Divorce papers. I'm filing for legal separation first, then divorce. I'm seeking primary custody of Molly. You can't take my daughter away from me. I'm not taking her away, but I'm not going to let her grow up thinking this is what marriage looks like. That it's okay to lie and cheat and manipulate people who love you. The words hit like physical blows. Tom, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. Ava, you've spent the last week posting on social media about what a controlling, abusive husband I am. You've turned your friends against me, lied to your family, and made me out to be some kind of monster. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands shaking slightly. Even now, even with the evidence right in front of you, you're still trying to manipulate the situation. I'm not. You are. He stood up, leaving the envelope on the table between us. I loved you, Eva. I really did. I would have done anything for you, for our family, but I can't compete with the version of yourself that you've created in your head. He turned to leave, then paused. Molly will be staying with me and Dennis for now. You can see her this weekend, but I want Patricia there when you do. You can't just... I can, and I am. It's all in the papers. He walked away, leaving me alone at the table with a cooling cup of coffee and the ruins of my marriage. Around me, the coffee shop continued its normal rhythm. Students typing on laptops, friends catching up, couples sharing pastries. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. The legal language was dense and formal, but the meaning was clear. Thomas Larkspur was seeking dissolution of marriage due to irreconcilable differences. He was requesting primary physical custody of the minor child. He was asking for a restraining order, preventing me from posting about him or their daughter on social media. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note in Tom's careful script. I hope someday you find whatever it is you're looking for. I hope it makes you happy. But I can't wait around to find out. I sat there for a long time, staring at the papers, waiting for the anger to come, waiting for the indignation, the righteous fury that had carried me through the past week. Instead, all I felt was empty. My phone buzzed with a text from Molly, sent from Tom's phone. Mommy, Daddy says I'm staying at Uncle Dennis's for a while. Are you sick? I love you. I started to cry then, right there in the middle of grind coffee, surrounded by strangers living their normal lives while mine fell apart. For the first time since this whole mess started, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I was the one who had been wrong. The next few days passed in a blur of frantic phone calls and desperate strategizing. I hired a lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Rebecca Martinez, who specialized in family law and had a reputation for fighting dirty. The good news, Rebecca said during our first consultation, is that courts generally favor joint custody arrangements. The bad news is that your husband has been very thorough in documenting everything. She spread the evidence across her conference table like a prosecutor building a case. There were printouts of my text messages with Owen, going back months, screenshots of my social media posts, Uber receipts showing my late-night trip to his apartment, even security camera footage from our building showing me stumbling home at dawn. How did he get all of this? I asked, my voice hollow. Most of it's from your own social media accounts or easily accessible records. The messages. Rebecca shrugged. Like I said, he's been thorough. I stared at the evidence of my own deception laid out in neat chronological order. Seen all together like this, it painted a damning picture of a woman systematically deceiving her husband and planning an affair. Can we fight this? We can try, but Eva, I have to ask, is any of this untrue? Did you not exchange these messages with your ex-boyfriend? Did you not spend the night at his apartment? I did, but did you or did you not lie to your husband about your whereabouts that night? I closed my eyes. I did. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. Then our best strategy is to minimize the damage. Focus on your role as a mother. Emphasize that this was an isolated incident of poor judgment, not a pattern of infidelity. But even as we strategized, I could feel the walls closing in. Tom wasn't just hurt, he was methodical. While I'd been posting on social media and playing the victim, he'd been quietly building an airtight case. That evening, I called my mother, desperate for support. Mom, Tom's filed for divorce. He's trying to take Molly away from me. There was a long pause. Eva, honey, maybe it's time to be honest with me. What really happened that night? Something in her tone made my stomach drop. What do you mean? Dennis called me today. My blood went cold. Dennis, Tom's brother, had always been quiet, observant. He'd never liked me much, though he'd been polite for Tom's sake. What did he say? He told me about the messages, Eva. About how long you'd been talking to this Owen person, about the lies. Her voice was heavy with disappointment. He also told me about the things you've been posting online, about Tom. I felt my last refuge crumbling. Mom, you don't understand. I understand that I raised you better than this. Helen's voice was sharp now, angry. I understand that Tom has been nothing but good to you and Molly. And I understand that instead of owning up to your mistakes, you've been trying to destroy his reputation to save your own. That's not... It is, Eva, and I'm ashamed of you. The line went quiet. When my mother spoke again, her voice was softer but no less firm. I love you, sweetheart. You're my daughter, and that will never change. But I can't support what you've done, and I can't stand by while you try to paint Tom as the villain in this story. After she hung up, I sat alone in my apartment, our apartment, though it felt foreign now with Tom's things gone, and tried to figure out my next move. I called Carla, but for the first time since this started, she seemed distant. I heard about the divorce papers, she said carefully. Carla, I need your support right now. Tom's trying to destroy me. Eva, she sighed heavily. Look, I've been thinking about everything you've told me, and some things aren't adding up. What do you mean? I mean, you told me you just crashed at a friend's place. You didn't tell me it was your ex-boyfriend. You didn't tell me you'd been talking to him for months. My heart sank. How did you... People talk, Eva, and when they do, they show screenshots. I closed my eyes. Of course. In our small social circle, secrets didn't stay secret for long. Carla, please, I need someone in my corner. I am in your corner. That's why I'm telling you to stop fighting this and start making amends. Tom's a good guy, Eva. Everyone knows that, and the more you try to make him look bad, the worse you look. After she hung up, I poured myself a large glass of wine and scrolled through social media. The supportive comments on my posts had dried up, replaced by a conspicuous silence. Some of my more inflammatory posts about emotional abuse had been deleted by friends who'd shared them, as if they were distancing themselves from the narrative. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Patricia. Molly is asking for you. You can see her tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Dennis's house. I'll be there." I typed back, "She's my daughter. I don't need supervision." The response came quickly. "Yes, you do." The next afternoon, I drove to Dennis's house in the suburbs, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I'd dressed carefully, conservative blouse, minimal makeup, trying to look like a responsible mother rather than the unhinged woman I'd been portrayed as. Dennis answered the door, his expression carefully neutral. "Eva." "Hi, Dennis. Is Molly here?" "She's in the backyard with Patricia." I followed him through the house, noting the family photos on the walls, pictures of Tom and Dennis as kids, their parents' wedding photo, recent pictures of Molly at Christmas and birthdays. I was in some of these photos, but suddenly I felt like an intruder in this family history. Molly was on the swing set when she saw me, and her face lit up with pure joy. "Mommy!" She ran to me, and I caught her in a fierce hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. For a moment, everything else faded away. The divorce papers, the evidence, the lies. There was just my daughter, solid and real and loving me despite everything. "I missed you so much, baby." "I missed you too. Are you and Daddy getting divorced?" The question, asked with 7-year-old directness, hit me like a physical blow. "Sweetheart, Daddy and we're having some problems right now." "Is it because you stayed at that man's house?" I looked up sharply. Patricia was standing nearby, her expression unreadable. "Who told you that?" "Nobody told me. I heard Daddy crying on the phone with Uncle Dennis. He said you stayed at another man's house and lied about it." The image of Tom crying, quiet, stoic Tom, made my chest tight. "Molly, it's complicated." "Did you lie, Mummy?" I stared at my daughter's earnest face, her wide eyes so much like Tom's. I could lie again, make up another story, try to preserve her image of me. But looking at her, I couldn't do it anymore. "Yes," I whispered, "I lied, and I hurt Daddy's feelings very badly." Molly nodded solemnly. "You should say sorry." "I tried, baby, but sometimes sorry isn't enough." We spent an hour together, playing on the swing set and talking about school and her friends. Normal mother-daughter conversation that felt precious and fragile, like something that might be taken away at any moment. When it was time for me to leave, Molly hugged me tight. "I love you, Mommy, even if you made a mistake." Driving home, I finally let myself cry, really cry, for the first time since this whole mess started. Not tears of frustration or self-pity, but grief for what I'd lost and what I'd thrown away. That night, I drafted a dozen different messages to Tom. Apologies, explanations, pleas for forgiveness. I deleted them all. What was there left to say? The evidence spoke for itself, laid out in neat chronological order, like a timeline of my own betrayal. I'd made my choices, one small lie, and rationalization at a time, until I'd built a wall of deception that no apology could tear down. All I could do now was wait for the consequences to unfold. The hearing took place on a grey November morning. I sat beside my lawyer, trying to look composed while Tom and his attorney reviewed their notes across the room. He looked steadier than I'd seen him in months, hurt, but resolved. When Judge Morrison began, the truth came crashing down piece by piece. The messages with Owen, the lies, the social media posts where I'd painted myself as a victim. Tom's lawyer was calm and precise, dismantling every excuse I'd ever made. Even my own mother's statement favored him. When it was my turn, I tried to explain, to plead for another chance. But the judge saw through me. "You've shown no true accountability," she said. "Primary custody goes to Mr. Larkspur. Supervised visitation for Mrs. Larkspur, pending counselling." The gavel fell like a sentence. In the hallway, Tom told me softly, "Sorry doesn't undo the damage, but if you do the work, for Molly's sake, maybe we can rebuild trust." That night, alone in my half-empty apartment, I finally stopped blaming anyone else. I destroyed everything myself. When Owen texted, "Maybe now we can see where this goes," I deleted it. Then I texted Tom, "Thank you for fighting for Molly. I'm going to become the mother she deserves." His reply, "I hope so." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.